Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. I do apologize for the very poor lighting. I'm trying to work this out. I usually do my videos outside. Not a professional here. I don't have people here with sets and lighting and all that. So, anyway, Destiny, Stephen Bennell, I believe his name is Stephen Bennell the third or whatever. He was on Sam Harris, kind of very excited to see that. I used to be a big fan of Sam Harris. I still am, but he had like a paywall subscription model, like $14.99 a month, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do it, you know. But occasionally he'll come out with some free stuff or play a portion of his podcast. So I'm gonna play a couple of clips here that I just phenomenal, and I think they'll address some of the questions that we all have, like say normal, sane people who are just befuddled. Like, how is it that this Trump is still around? How is he the nominee? How is it that this guy, you know, this guy, the worst. I'm not going to go on and on. I've done 500 videos on Trump or so. You know how I feel. I've said everything I've ever had to say about Trump in my videos. But it's just kind of a mystery, especially when you have intelligent people, people with good jobs, professionals, and who are otherwise awesome people, but they support him. It really is a head scratcher, you know. So let me do this. I'm gonna play a clip here, and Sam Harris asks Destiny, gets into it a little bit, like, what the hell is this? Listen to this. This is very good. Sam Harris and Destiny.
What do you attribute this skewing to? I mean, let's take the case of an intelligent person who is not allergic to Trump in the way that we are.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to know some of these people. I even have a few good friends who, I would consider, this is something I say to their face, I consider them low information voters. They're simply not disposed to pay attention to all of the thousands of norm violations and other indiscretions that Trump is trailing, right? Mm-hmm. So they have a little bit in their head. They have a lot of what I would consider misinformation from the right that more or less exonerates Trump on all counts. The phrase, the Russia collusion hoax, does an inordinate amount of work in their brains.
Tell me about it.
And they've essentially just averted their eyes
it's all
from
bullshit,
the whole problem,
by the way.
and they come away with a feeling that more or less all of the kind of reaction that you and I have had to Trump is totally overblown. It is Trump derangement syndrome. It is just, we don't like the guy's personality, and we couldn't get over that. But when you look at policies, he's super normal and not even especially conservative, and much of his criticism of the powers that be and the way things were done in Washington for as long as anyone can remember, many of those criticisms are valid. There is a kind of deep state sclerosis that needs to be reamed out.
Obviously,
they don't spend much time thinking.
Obviously, he's steel manning the people we know who are normal, professionals, intelligent, otherwise great people. Okay. Obviously, I don't have to explain, but that's what he's doing. He's steel manning, and then let's see what Destiny says. Here we go. Ready?
Thinking about the actual ideologues in his orbit, people like Steve Bannon and what he might say on his dumb podcast. And they just see a very clear trade-off between Trump, who is calling bullshit on obvious bullshit, like wokeism, and the moral panic on the left that has racialized everything and made it seem like trans bathrooms is the greatest human rights concern of our time, etc. And they're truly allergic to all the stuff that's happened on the left, and so they're willing to support Trump, warts and all. How would you perform psychic surgery on this person?
So first we have to be really clear. Are we talking about the audience, or are we talking about like the larger content creators? I call them content creators. You might call them pundits or commentators.
Yeah, I guess anything you would want to say to or about such a person so as to have an effect upon anyone in the audience like him or her.
I think there are several really large things at play. I think one of the larger, there are several large topics at play. One of the larger ones that is hard to talk about is I had a viewer that emailed me this with this idea, and I love this idea, and I stole it. He calls it magic boxes. That
This is excellent.
If you were to go back into the past and you were to hold an abacus, okay, it's very obvious what the function of an abacus is, and you can't hide any conspiracies inside of it. There are no secret cameras. There is no government listening device. Nobody's stealing your. It's just you just see what it is and you operate it, as you do. Nowadays with a phone, you don't really know everything that's going on inside of the phone. So if somebody were to say something like, "I think my phone is always recording me," well, to even begin to have that conversation, it's like, okay, well, do we understand, how telemetry works, how data is sent, what kind of connection is needed, what kind of permissions are needed, like the difference between like the operating system versus an application. But like, there's so much you have to go through that in life today, we basically operate so many of these magical boxes where are on the operating level, on the user level, things are so abstracted away from what's actually happening that it's allowed people to insert so much craziness that can't be easily fact-checked by anything. And I find that this is especially true when you look at my obsession lately has been, I'm trying to compile like a convincing argument related to the January 6th stuff. So this is where my brain is kind of existing. But you might look at something like Donald Trump making a phone call to not to Raffensperger, but below him, an election fraud investigator in Georgia. If you have the prerequisite background to understand civics and the role of the president in a campaign and the role of a state election investigator, all of that, just that phone call in and of itself is so unfathomably inappropriate. It is such a horrible call. But in order to even begin to understand why, you have to explain so much.
Exactly.
And I'll be honest, even I didn't really understand. Like when you say that, like, well, there's electors and, the people don't elect the president, the electors, I don't even really know what that meant.
It's
until,
complicated,
2 years
yeah.
ago.
And most people don't
most
know.
People just, I don't even, well, I know this because polling did it. Most people don't even know 3 branches of government, right? So how can you even begin to explain, the type of egregious norm violations that are happening when people don't know the norms, the systems that have the norms? People just don't have the understanding to even be able to grapple with, why would it be bad for this guy to make a phone call?
Let me just be right back.
People immediately understand, like cutting children's penises off to make them trans or whatever other crazy, like far left conspiracy stuff the conservatives like to obsess over. Like that's immediately understandable. So yeah, that's one huge thing that you have to get over is you just need like a decent foundation of knowledge to even understand why some of the things are norm breaking. Yeah.
Let's focus on January 6th. What would you say to someone who thinks that January 6th was basically a non-event? I mean, it certainly wasn't an insurrection. It was there was some sort of misbehavior on one side of the building, and on the other side of the building, courtesy of Tucker Carlson and others, we have footage of the cops just letting people in. And so, was it violent? I guess if you look at some of the footage, it was super violent, but some of the people don't even look at that footage, and they just see the people getting led in and then wandering around in what seemed to be a kind of a low-stress environment, right? And so that seems strange. And then there are rumors that there were, FBI plants in the crowd.
That's
and
the Rogan thing.
Maybe this
Conspiracy,
whole thing was a kind
FBI.
of false flag thing that I heard a rumor that Pelosi didn't get enough cops there when she could have, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Trump did say from the dais, that you should all be peaceful in some form.
See
and so
how this shit works?
just this impressionistic tour of half-truths gives people a sense that whatever happened over there, it was ugly.
It's always a trace.
And I wouldn't have voted for it, but it's not really. It wasn't really Trump's responsibility, and it was just a mob that misbehaved, and American democracy wasn't at stake. How would you untangle that?
I mean, it's kind of going back to what you said about, it sounds so bad to say, but like low information voters. For stuff like this, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a little focus group because I've compiled so much information about this. And I got 6 pretty decently big YouTubers together. And I like went through like 7 hours of information and I asked them like, hey, what's the most surprising thing to you? Or what didn't you know? Or what do you care about? Or what don't you care about? And for a lot of it, it was just like so much information that people don't know. So one of the things that I was told after talking to these people so long is one thing they said is, I didn't realize the timelines at the Capitol. So for instance, people will say, Donald Trump tweeted, stay peaceful, and that should be good, right? But when you actually look at everything that was happening in the day of and the context, and it's like, oh, that tweet was sent like 20 minutes after the Capitol had been broken into, like an hour and a half after the Capitol grounds had been penetrated. When you start to see the tweets in context of like an actual timeline, stuff takes on a far more insidious shape
Right.
than when you just say, oh, well, you know, he tweeted out, be peaceful. You know, who knows at what time or what part of the day. Having more facts, I think, and contextualizing things in a more appropriate way. Nobody knew anything about the elector plot, you know, like the 7 fake slates of electors. And none of this is like conspiratorial. Like all the information is out there. You can see the fake slates that they all signed with their signatures. There's a YouTube video of them trying to go to the Capitol in Michigan to enter. The plot inside to have Clark replace Rosen, when Rosen and Donahue are arguing with Trump about sending out a fake letter to the states about voter fraud, that was a really big one. A lot of people will say this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard about. People say, like, we don't know if Trump knew he was lying about voter fraud. How could you ever prove what's in somebody's mind? And I was like, well, let me introduce you to the entire criminal justice system of the United States, because in order to convict on crimes, you have to know what the mens rea is. That's the most important part of convicting on a crime. But for Trump, there are so many examples of somebody saying, hey, by the way, this isn't true. And then like 2 days later, Trump will say the exact same claim over and over and over and over and over again. He does this like so many times. And having that clearly laid out where people can say, you know what? I think Trump actually just was lying. And I think he knew the whole time. But it's a big information dump. And you have to find a way to present the information in like a compelling and an interesting and like an emotional way. And then how close we were. Oh, there's 2 other things. How close we were on the 6th to everything failing. If Pence had flipped, if there was more violence. Like there are a couple of things. Pence is the big part that didn't flip that could have. That's one thing. And then the second thing was I didn't realize this until I was really late into my research. Oh my God. The best video that you could ever watch on January 6th is InfoWars. If you really want to know the day of what people felt like and what was going on when they watched that, it's so funny because when conservatives talk about it now, they memory hole it, right? Oh, it's just some people wandering around. Who cares? Watching the conservative coverage and the tweets the day of, I saw, you know, like Ashley Babbitt might be the first victim of the second revolution. There was that meme video of the woman who got sprayed with mace or whatever, and she's like, we're storming the Capitol, dude. It's a revolution. You know, constantly referring to the rioters as patriots, saying that they've taken the Capitol, we've overtaken it, we've got it, we've captured this back, you know, for the people. It's so obvious what everybody's saying and what's going on. And then as soon as Babbitt gets shot, the National Guard shows up, the rhetoric starts to change a bit.
Right.
There are so many funny quotes. There's even like quotes from some of these guys on, I think Owen Schroyer might have been one, where people are saying things like, these are patriots. This isn't BLM or Antifa. You could tell these are patriots. And then like the next day, it was all Antifa. We don't know who any of these people were. It's like,
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do a part 2 here. There's some more about this appeal of Trump and Sam Harris, basically the same sentiment. Like, I just don't get it. Like, he's such a mediocre character. Like, the guy has 0 talent. Like, why this guy? I'll be back for that one. But let me put this up first, and then I'll put a part 2. By the way, I'm going to also talk about, this is Michael Shermer's book, Conspiracy, Why Do We Believe in Conspiracies? And they touched on it here a little bit about, you know, Sam Harris had half-truths. There's usually a kernel of truth to every single conspiracy. Those are the ones that live and thrive. And I'll get more into why people believe these things. Okay, more to come. Peace, everyone. Tabor Talk. Okay, if you made it this far, thank you very much. Part 2 is coming up. Make sure you like and subscribe and spread it around. It helps with the algorithm. Peace, everyone. More to come. Part 2 coming.